These violent delights have violent ends. The maze was not meant for you. Hey! Welcome to the Propsmith channel. I'm Sean McBee. In this video, we're making a Westworld maze. Alright, this Westworld maze is one of my favorite things I've ever made. And there's actually a lot to talk about regarding this. It's not as straightforward as it looks, first of all. Secondly, it really delves into what inspires me personally to make a prop rather than buying a prop. And it involves more disciplines to get done than you might think. And as a bonus, if you stick around to the end, I'll also tell you about this nifty base that I also designed and made. All right, so the Pigs in Clover Maze from Westworld. And the first thing I want to go over is why? Why make this? Well, when I first started, it was like the day the episode aired. I was like, I like that, I want it, I'm going to make it. But by the time I finished it, because, life gets in the way, other people already had them out. The problem was that all the other ones that were out, they were pretty much 3D printed and they were idealized. And I do like an idealized prop, but in this instance, this is an old junky thing that was buried in the ground in the story of the show. And while some of the ones used on the show were in fact 3D printed, the one hero shot had a bunch of weird little inconsistencies that made it feel like it was handmade. There's weird thin little walls and uneven walls and little bits that just come to a point when you would expect them to terminate on a flat bit. And no one else had seemed to catch any of those details. And they weren't on all the props, so there's nothing inaccurate about those. But the one hero shot where you really, really see this thing has all these weird things, like these two paths that don't meet up. They're sort of off kilter from one another. And I loved all of that. So the first thing was, I decided how I wanted to make it. And I decided that it should be made out of wood. 3D printing would have been easy. And I did do a test at 3D printing, but the one in the story would have been made out of wood. And so I felt like mine had to be also made out of wood. And other people have made them out of wood. They CNC'd them to get the thickness. But when CNCing, you can't get those sharp corners. So I opted to go with laser. And I did not have access to a laser that would cut through wood this thick. What I could cut through was 1/4 inches thick. So what I did was I cut multiple layers and I stacked them and glued them. And I gotta say, I feel like I did a good job because you can't tell that there are layers like that. Go me. Getting ahead of myself there. That's what I ended up doing for the cover as well. Because if you see the cover on the screenshot, it has this rough edge around it that looks like it's been cut with a hand saw. And so I just took a circle a very thin circle, and I went and unevened up the outside edge and cut that on a laser and stacked it up perfectly so it had those lines like in the screenshot of the prop on the show. They might have actually cut it like that or done something similar to what I did, but I think the look matches up pretty damn well. So to plan out the maze itself, what I had to do was go into Photoshop, take the screenshot, and skew it out using the perspective warp tool so that it was a perfect circle. So that I basically was creating, from an angled shot of it, a dead on. I did the same thing with the cover, though somebody's got like a thumb covering this bottom part, but you can still see most of it really well. And then I went into Illustrator and I copied this exactly. I copied all those weird, inconsistent bits. And then I took it to the Glowforge and I cut the wood and I stacked it. It was a lot of wood, actually. Meanwhile, I went into Procreate and I took my perspective corrected shot of the cover and I basically traced it. I wanted to recreate all the little gradients as well as I could. Used various different brushes and pencils and recreated it the absolute best I could. Don't be afraid of tracing. It's the best way to make sure that you're being super, super accurate. And I'm honestly still impressed with myself when I look at this, even though it's just tracing, because I've got all the colors, all the shading right. I found the exact fonts to match, and I sort of had to fill in a little bit of this chicken and her little chicks at the bottom. I redrew those myself, matching the style as best I could. I think I did a good job. This Hours of Fun down here, though it was obscured, you could tell it said Hours of Fun. So I took that, and what we've got here is one very thin piece of wood, and then this edge. I could have taken one very thin piece of wood and bent it around, but I wouldn't have had that scoring effect around the edge. So I did 2 or 3 very thin rings and stacked them and glued them to this, and that's how I created this. And on the show, it fits around like that, so it fits right in there and also works as holding the maze in the lid like that. So that gave me all the sizing on that. And I had to sort of guess at the overall size because there wasn't a ruler in the shot with it. But I just sort of eyeballed it and guessed around 6 inches, I think is what I came up with. So once it was all assembled, this is again a more solid base piece with all of these pieces just stacked on top of it. And that base piece had a little engraving of the overall image so that I could place it all properly. It acted as a guide. It's completely obscured, you can't see it because I was able to glue it on there perfectly with a lot of patience. Once that was all there, I stained this. And over here, I printed my image on just some adhesive half-sheet label paper, like real basic stuff. I just stuck it on there, and then I sanded the edges to get this really nice effect here, and it came out super well. I don't know exactly how a label like this would have been made at the time in the 1800s, but I think it did a really good job of making it seem vintage and not like computer shipping label paper. Just that sanding on the edge really worked. And then, to finish her off, I used Schmear in various colors. Now, Schmear is a Hollywood aging tool that comes in various colors, and it's like the worst deodorant stick ever is kind of how it works. They're called crayons. because they're basically deodorant crayons. They don't smell good. And they come in different colors. So this is Rotten Fuller. This is Fuller's Earth. This is, you may have heard of Fuller's Earth. That's like a dirt material that's used in film to dirty up clothes and other props. This is Sweat Stains. And these are usually used on clothes. But I use them along with a couple of paint colors to dirty up the overall prop. Gave some sort of dusty clay-looking age to the wood here, and just some yellowing and age and grime. Like really went deep on it because it's been buried underground in the desert in the story. But then when it came to displaying it, I had another conundrum. Because, get out of here! If you put it together like this, you only see the cover. And if you put it like this, you only see the maze. And if you put them side by side, then you don't really get the sense that they're connected to each other. So I designed a display stand that would disappear into the background, because it's mostly clear, and that would display them both with an overlap. So you know they're connected, and this goes on top of this, and it's sort of at the midway point. But overall, it just disappears. It's all clear. And the way it works is there's just a lip here that attaches that and holds it there in place. Whereas this side, where the maze is, has a punch out, and I've created these little feet that drop down and hold it. And that's just other laser cut pieces of acrylic that I've designed with and held together with this amazing material called Weld-On that's just, it's the consistency of water, and you just put it at a seam and it seeps in, and after a couple of minutes has molecularly bonded this acrylic together. Like, that's solid. And now while on display, it disappears into the background. Because it's Westworld and it's full of little secrets, I wanted to have some little secrets here as well. So when you take off the cover, there's the old school Westworld logo from the flashback scenes. And then around the edge, in very thin letters, it just reads, "These violent delights have violent ends. The maze wasn't meant for you." And it repeats all along. And then when you take out the maze, right here on this little foot is the Delos logo. All just laser cut on a Glowforge. I'm not really a fan of labeling my props when they're on display. Some people love that. I don't really. So when I make my stands, for the most part, I like to just keep them where they display stuff. But in this instance, I thought it was really fitting to have those little Easter eggs there. And that is my Westworld maze. I hope you enjoyed that video. Whether you did or not, leave a comment and let me know. If you want more videos like this, be sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you always get notified when there are new videos, and we will see you around. And though I wanted it to sort of disappear in the background, I did want, because it's Westworld, no, I did want it to just disappear into... I'm having troubles.